Welcome back, my weirdlings. We have stepped into quarter 3 of Raven's Lorecast, the season of stewardship. If quarter 1 was about remembering where we came from, and quarter 2 was about crossing thresholds into becoming, quarter 3 is about responsibility, about what happens after the awakening, about tending what we've built, holding what we've learned, choosing who we become when no one is watching. This is the season of sovereignty, of discernment, of craft, of devotion. Not because perfection is required, but because power means something different once we understand its consequences. So wherever you're listening from, kitchen, car, porch, workplace, walking trail, or beneath the stars, I'm glad you're here, because this quarter, we are not chasing transformation. We are learning how to carry it. All right, my weirdlings, let's begin. There is a moment before anything is made where nothing exists yet. No form, no structure, no proof. Just the possibility of it, and the quiet awareness that something could begin. That is where we are right now. Not at the end of a process, not even in the middle of one. At the threshold of making, where the idea of something has not yet become the reality of it. And that space is where most people stop, because it's easier to imagine something than it is to shape it. Easier to think about who you could be than to become someone who acts like it. Easier to hold a vision than to live inside the choices that would build it. So we hover here in possibility, in almost, in someday. But that is not where making happens. Making begins the moment you move from noticing into participation. The moment you stop observing your life and start shaping it. And that shift is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with certainty or clarity or perfect timing. It arrives quietly as a decision, a small one. Often so small you could ignore it. Speak or stay silent. Begin or delay. Choose differently or repeat what's familiar. That's it. That's where the work starts. And it doesn't feel like power. It feels like responsibility. Because once you recognize that your life is shaped through what you choose, what you repeat, and what you allow, you can't fully pretend that you're separate from it anymore. You are in it. You are part of it. You are one of the hands doing the shaping, whether you claim that or not. And that's what this episode is about. Not the idea of being a witch, not the identity of it, the practice, the function, the reality of what it means to be someone who makes. Because the witch was never just someone who knew things. She was someone who did something with what she knew. She took what existed and altered it. Not perfectly, not completely, but deliberately. And that's the difference. Deliberate participation. Not reacting, not drifting, not waiting for something outside of you to tell you when it's time, but choosing again and again in ways that accumulate until something begins to take form. So before we go any further, take a moment. Notice where you are right now. Not where you want to be, not where you think you should be, where you actually are. What's already in motion, what you've already started, whether you meant to or not. Because you are not starting from nothing. You are always working with something, patterns, habits, decisions already made. That is your material, and you don't need to judge it. You just need to see it clearly, because you cannot shape what you refuse to look at. So tonight, we are not asking what you believe. We are not asking what you hope will happen. We are asking something much simpler. What are you making right now? Through your choices, through your attention, through what you continue and what you allow to stop. What is taking form in your life because of how you are participating in it? And if the answer to that question is not what you want, then that is not failure. That is information. Because awareness is where making begins. Not at perfection, not at certainty, at recognition. And from there, you choose again. So as we move forward, let this be the space we hold. No pressure, no performance, but participation. The willingness to engage with what is already unfolding. The willingness to shape it instead of standing outside of it. The willingness to become someone who does not just imagine change, but creates it. So if you're here, you're already in it. You've already noticed something that doesn't quite fit anymore, something that's asking for a shift, something that is ready to become something else. You don't need to name it yet. You don't need to understand it completely. You just need to stay with it, because once you begin, even quietly, you are no longer waiting. You are making. So my weird ones, from here, we look at how that has always been done across time, across cultures, across every place where someone decided to shape what was given to them into something new. What does it actually mean to make something? Not assemble, not imitate, not repeat what's already been done, but make. To bring something into existence that does not exist before you touched it. That is the territory of the witch, and it always has been. Long before the word witch carried fear, distortion, or accusation, it pointed to something much simpler and much more dangerous. A person who could shape reality through intention, attention, and action. A maker. If you trace this idea back across cultures, you'll find that the witch was never just a spellcaster or healer. She was a craftsperson of reality itself. In many European folk traditions, the word for witch is tied to roots meaning to bend, to shape, or to turn. Not to control in the rigid sense, but to influence the direction of things. To take what exists and alter its course. In Old English, witcha and witcha are often associated with bending or shaping forces. Whether or not every linguistic thread holds up perfectly under modern scholarship, the symbolic truth remains. The witch has always been understood as someone who works with the raw materials of existence and turns them into something else. And this idea is not isolated to one place. Across the world, we see versions of the witch as maker emerging again and again. In ancient Greece, Hecate was not just a goddess of crossroads and spirits. She was a liminal force who governed transitions, transformations, and the unseen process between states. She did not simply observe change, she facilitated it. In Norse tradition, Practitioners of seiðr worked with threads of fate, not as passive observers, but as active participants. They were not predicting the future as something fixed. They were engaging in a living system, one that could be influenced through knowledge, ritual, and will. Among many indigenous peoples of North America, creation is not a distant myth, but an ongoing relationship. Stories of beings like Spider Woman, who weaves the world into being, or Coyote, who reshapes reality through action and consequence, reflect a worldview where creation is continuous, not finished, not static, always in motion. And in West African traditions, figures like Anansi do not simply tell stories, they alter reality through them. The act of storytelling itself becomes a form of making, shaping how people understand the world and therefore how they live within it. Across these traditions, a pattern emerges. The witch is not separate from creation, the witch participates in it. And that participation is not abstract, it is practical, it is embodied, it is daily. Because here is the truth that sits underneath all of this mythology. You are already making your life, constantly. Whether you realize it or not, modern psychology and neuroscience have actually given us language for something practitioners have always known intuitively. Perception is not passive. Your brain is not simply receiving reality, it is constructing it. At any given moment, your brain is filtering an overwhelming amount of sensory data, far more than you could ever consciously process. It decides what matters, what is relevant, what gets your attention. This system is often referred to as predictive processing. Your mind is constantly making predictions about what you are about to experience and then updating those predictions based on incoming information, which means you don't just see the world as it is, you see the world as you are prepared to see it. My weird ones, your expectations, your past experiences, your beliefs, they shape what becomes visible to you. This is why two people can live in the same environment and experience entirely different realities. Not because one is wrong and the other is right, but because they are making meaning in different ways. And meaning is not a small thing. Meaning directs attention. Attention directs behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. My weirdlings, that is the mechanism of creation. Not mystical in the sense of being separate from reality, but mystical in the sense that it is happening constantly, often without your awareness. So when we talk about the witch as maker, we are not stepping outside of reality. We are stepping into conscious participation with it. We are saying, if I am already shaping my life through what I notice, what I believe, and how I act, then what happens when I do that on purpose? That is where craft begins. Because making is not just about having an idea, it is about giving that idea form, and form requires action. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They feel something, they understand something, they even name it, but they don't make anything from it. They stop at awareness. And awareness on its own does not change your life. It informs it, it opens a door, but you still have to walk through. Historically, witches did not separate insight from action. If you knew something, you did something with it. You made a charm. You changed your behavior. You altered your environment. You spoke differently. You chose differently. Because knowledge that is not applied remains theoretical. And the witch does not live in theory. she lives in practice. In the everyday shaping of things, cooking is making, speaking is making, choosing is making, even refusing is making. Every decision you make or avoid creates a direction, and over time, those directions become life. This is where the word craft matters, because craft implies skill, practice, repetition, adjustment. You do not become a maker by accident. You become one by paying attention to what you are creating and refining it over time. And this is where the deeper layer comes in, because making is not always comfortable. My weird one's creation requires change, and change disrupts stability, which means that every time you make something new, whether it's a boundary, a choice, a piece of art, or a shift in identity, you are also unmaking something else. The person you were before, the patterns that kept you where you were, the relationships that only functioned under the old version of you. This is why creation can feel threatening, not because making is dangerous in itself, but because it alters the structure of your life. And that is something people resist, internally and externally. There is a concept in cognitive science called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when your beliefs, actions, or identity are no longer aligned. When you begin to make different choices, you create dissonance. Your mind tries to resolve it, sometimes by encouraging growth, sometimes by pulling you back into what is familiar. This is why change often comes with doubt, not because you are doing it wrong, but because you are doing it at all. And this is where the witch as maker becomes something more than poetic language. It becomes responsibility. Because once you understand that your life is shaped through your attention, your choices, and your actions, you can no longer fully claim that you are simply at the mercy of it. That doesn't mean everything is within your control. It isn't. Circumstances exist, systems exist, other people exist. But within that, there is still space. And that space is where making happens. The witch works in that space, not controlling everything, not predicting everything, but shaping what she can, deliberately, consistently, over time. And this is where we return to something very simple. Making is not about perfection. It is about participation. You do not have to know exactly what you are building. You do not have to have the final version in mind. You do not have to get it right the first time. You just have to begin, and then adjust, and then continue. This is how anything real is created. Not in a single moment of clarity, but in a series of choices that reinforce each other. So when we talk about being a witch, specifically the witch as maker, we are not talking about a title. We are talking about a way of engaging with your life. You notice what is happening. You decide what it means. You choose what to do next. And then you do it again and again and again until the pattern becomes something new. That is the craft. That is the work. And that is the power. Not the power to control everything, but the power to participate in what is being made, including yourself. Because you are not a fixed thing. You are something in process, something being shaped. And whether you claim it or not, you are one of the hands doing the shaping, which means the question is no longer, am I creating my life? You are. The question is, are you doing it on purpose? And if you are not, this is where that changes. because awareness has already happened. My weirdlings, you have seen something. You have recognized something. You have felt something shift. And under this sky, that is not where the story ends. That is where making begins. My bright ones, there is a moment just before something becomes undeniable where you can still pretend you don't see it. You can soften it. You can explain it away. You can tell yourself, not yet, not like this. I'll get to it later. Tonight is not that moment. We are standing under a waxing gibbous moon, roughly 75 to 80% illuminated, about 12 days past the new moon. And this phase, this is where things stop being theoretical. The waxing gibbous is not the beginning of a cycle. It is not the dreaming phase. It is not the quiet planting of intention. It is the phase of becoming visible. Everything you set into motion at the new moon on July 14th, every intention, every internal shift, every promise you made to yourself is now taking shape. And the moon asks, is this what you meant? Not what you said you wanted, what you are actually creating. Because there is a difference. You can intend one thing and build another entirely. You can say you want change and still behave in ways that reinforce the familiar. You can call something growth and still be avoiding the truth of it. The waxing gibbous does not judge that. It does reveal it. It creates pressure, not to punish you, but to clarify you. Because pressure shows structure, and under this sky, structure is being tested. The moon is in Sagittarius all day, fire sign, mutable fire, movement, expansion, truth that refuses to stay contained. Sagittarius is not interested in subtle emotional processing. That was Cancer's domain. You've already felt it. You've already circled it. You've already named it, at least internally. Sagittarius says, say it out loud. This is the energy of blunt honesty, perspective shifts, sudden clarity that rearranges everything. It's the moment where something clicks and you can't go back to not knowing. And because this moon is waxing, that realization does not stay internal. It wants expression. You may feel it as the urge to speak, or the urge to create, or the urge to finally act on something you've been holding back. And here's the important part. That urge is not random. It is the natural progression of what you began 2 weeks ago. Which means, my bright ones, if something feels urgent now, it's because it's ready. Not perfect, not complete, but ready enough to move. And above you, the sun has shifted into Leo. We have crossed the threshold from water into fire, from internal processing into external expression. Leo is identity in motion, creative force, visibility, the courage to exist as yourself without editing it for comfort. And Leo energy asks a question that is both simple and confronting. Is this actually you? Not the version of you that keeps the peace, not the version that stays palatable, not the version that avoids risks. You. Because Leo does not separate identity from action. What you do, what you create, what you say becomes the evidence of who you are. So now we have a sky that is aligning in a very specific way. The moon says, tell the truth. The sun says, be seen doing it. And neither of those things are particularly comfortable because layered beneath this fire, Mercury is still retrograde in Cancer. So while you feel pulled forward, you are also being pulled backward back into memory, back into emotional patterns, back into conversations that were never finished. And this is where people get frustrated because it feels like contradiction. I'm ready to move forward, so why am I being dragged back? But that's not what's happening. You are being refined. Mercury retrograde in Cancer asks, is this truth coming from who you are now or from who you had to be before? Because there is a difference between authentic expression and reactive expression. One creates, the other repeats. And under this sky, you are being given the opportunity to tell the truth without reenacting the wound. That's the work. Because this is not just fire energy. This is a fire trine. Sun is in Leo. Moon is in Sagittarius. Saturn and Neptune in Aries. 3 points of fire forming a triangle in the sky. And when fire moves like this, it accelerates. This is confidence building, identity activating, courage becoming available whether you feel ready or not. But Saturn is retrograde in Aries, so while that fire is present, discipline is being recalibrated. You are not being asked, can you act? You are being asked, can you act in alignment? Can you follow through? Can you hold the version of yourself you are trying to become? Because Saturn does not care about bursts of courage. It cares about consistency. And Neptune is also retrograde in Aries. So illusions around identity, the roles you've been playing, the stories you've been telling yourself, they're dissolving. And what's left is far less polished, but far more true. Not who you imagined you would be, not who you thought you needed to become, who you already are when the performance drops. And then Jupiter in Leo expands all of it. It magnifies your desire to express, to create, to be seen. So if something inside you has been waiting, this is the moment where it becomes harder not to act than it is to step forward. And at the same time, Venus in Libra is still present. So there is a pull toward harmony, toward keeping things smooth, toward maintaining connection. But with the moon in Sagittarius, truth outweighs peace. So you may find yourself in moments this week where you have to choose. Do I keep this comfortable or do I make this honest? And the sky is not subtle in its answer. Make it honest. Because Mars in Gemini, conjunct Uranus, is creating rapid movement. Thoughts move quickly. Realizations happen mid-sentence. Words come out before you've fully planned them. This is breakthrough energy, but it is not controlled. So the practice here is not suppression. It is awareness. Speak, yes. Create, yes. Act, yes. But stay present in it. Because what you say now, what you begin now, has momentum. And beneath all of this, the North Node in Pisces remains, calling you towards something softer, something intuitive, something that cannot be forced. So while fire is pushing you outward, Pisces is reminding you, stay connected, stay feeling, stay human in it. Because this is not just a sky of expression, it is a sky of creation. And creation is the bridge between internal truth and external reality. This is where the witch as maker emerges, not in theory, not in identity, but in action. Because under this sky, you are not being asked what you believe. You are being asked, what are you making out of it? What are you building? What are you saying? What are you choosing to bring into form? Because the waxing gibbous does not wait forever. The full moon is coming, and whatever you begin now will be revealed. So tonight, pay attention to what feels insistent, not urgent in a chaotic way, but persistent. That idea you can't stop thinking about, that truth you keep circling, that thing you almost say and then swallow, that's not random, that's emergence. And the sky is holding it steady just long enough for you to recognize it. Because once you do, you don't just see it, you shape it. And that is where we move from sky into hands. Before you can shape bread, you have to listen to fire. And no ingredient tells the truth about fire quite like garlic. Most people scorch it. They rush the process, crank the heat, and then wonder why it bites back. But garlic only sweetens for those who respect time. Roasting garlic is not just cooking. It's transformation under watchful patience. It is the raw becoming radiant, not through force, but through sustained attention. And that is where we begin. Roasting the garlic starts with taking a whole bulb, leave the papery skin intact, and slice just enough off the top to expose the tips of the cloves. Set it on a square of foil. Drizzle about a tablespoon of olive oil over the top, letting it sink between the cloves. Let it disappear into the spaces you cannot see. Sprinkle a little sea salt if you like. Fold the foil loosely into a pouch, giving it space to breathe, not tight, not sealed, just held. Place it in a 375 degree Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius oven for 40 to 45 minutes. And while it roasts, do not rush it. Do not check it every 5 minutes. Let the process complete itself, because this is your first act of making in this space, resisting the urge to interfere. When you open the packet, the cloves should be golden, soft, and buttery in scent, not sharp, not aggressive, transformed. Let it cool slightly, then squeeze each clove out. It should slip free like sunlight from skin. Mash them until smooth. That right there is your base, your foundation, your proof that time and attention change the nature of things. Here is the ingredients list, or as I like to call it, the maker's components. This isn't a traditional bread. It's closer to a tender quick loaf, rustic, bright, soft but structured. You will need 2 cups gluten-free all-purpose flour with xanthan gum included, 1.5 teaspoons baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon salt, the zest of 1 lemon, 1 tablespoon fresh thyme leaves, all roasted garlic cloves mashed, 1 cup unsweetened non-dairy milk, almond, oat, or coconut, whatever you prefer, 1/4 cup of olive oil, 2 tablespoons maple syrup or honey. This is optional, but it rounds the edges beautifully. And 1 teaspoon apple cider vinegar. Preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees Celsius. Grease or line a small loaf pan. And before you begin mixing, pause. Look at what you have in front of you, because this is the part most people skip. This is not just food. This is a system of elements, each carrying a function beyond flavor. Flour is earth, foundation, stability, the structure that holds everything else in place. It represents the physical reality you are building. Garlic is fire transformed. Protection, yes, but more than that, it is alchemy. It begins sharp and becomes sweet. It is proof that intensity can become nourishment. Time is resilience, ancient herb of courage, clarity, and quiet strength. It does not overpower, it steadies. Lemon zest is illumination, clarity, the sharp brightness that cuts through heaviness and brings awareness forward. Olive oil is continuity. It binds, softens, and carries. It is the thread that allows separate things to become one. Milk is water, adaptability, integration. It brings cohesion. Salt is truth. It sharpens everything it touches. It makes flavor visible. Baking powder is air, expansion, the unseen force that creates lift, space where there was none. And the vinegar, that small, almost invisible addition, is activation. It reacts, it changes the chemistry, it creates movement. And this is where the deeper layer sits. You are not just combining ingredients, you are orchestrating interaction. So for making the loaf, we want to start with one bowl and whisk together the flour, baking powder, salt, lemon zest, and thyme. As you mix, notice the texture: dry, separate, distinct. This is potential, not yet formed. In another bowl, blend the milk, olive oil, mashed garlic, maple syrup, and vinegar. This mixture will be softer, unified, already moving toward cohesion. And now you bring them together. Pour the wet into the dry. Stir slowly, not aggressively, not carelessly, just until combined. This is important because overmixing does not create strength. It creates density. And this is the lesson. More effort is not always better. Right effort matters. The texture should resemble a thick batter, not kneaded dough, something that holds shape but yields easily. Pour it into the prepared pan. Smooth the top. Brush it lightly with olive oil and pause again, because this is the moment before commitment. Everything up until now has been adjustable. This is where that ends. Now we're going to move into baking, where form becomes fixed. Place the loaf into the oven and close the door. Do not open it immediately. Do not interfere, because heat needs consistency. Bake this for 35 to 40 minutes, and while it bakes, understand this: the oven is not destroying what you made, it is setting it. This is where everything becomes what it is going to be. The lift happens, the structure firms, the transformation completes. And you cannot rush this. You cannot negotiate with it. You can only allow it. When it's done, it will be golden, fragrant, edges just pulling away from the pan. Let it cool for 10 minutes before removing. Then let it rest fully, because even now, it is still finishing itself. The maker's lesson is this: this loaf carries all four elements: earth in the grain, the herb, the salt; air in the lift, the expansion, the unseen rise; fire in the roasted garlic and the oven's steady heat; water in the milk, the binding force between everything else. But more than that, it carries process. It carries restraint, attention, timing, adjustment. And that is what making actually is. Not forcing, not controlling, but participating with enough awareness to guide what becomes. Because here's the truth, my weird ones. You made this, not the ingredients, not the oven. You. You chose, you combined, you adjusted, you committed. And now you live with what you made. Here is the spellcraft, or what I like to call the maker's invocation. You can speak this as you mix, or as it bakes, or as you tear. It does not need performance, it needs presence. By patience and by flame, what's raw becomes whole. By time and by will, I nourish my soul. What's made in love multiplies in kind. From these hands may abundance unwind. Let it be simple. Let it be real. Tear it. Eat it warm with olive oil. Or give it to someone who needs proof that care still exists in the world. Because that is what you have just practiced. Not baking, making. Turning raw into radiant. Discipline into delight. Effort into offering. And once you understand that, you will start to see it everywhere. By now, my weirdlings, you've felt it, not as an idea, not as something distant or abstract, but as something closer, something that has been sitting in your life longer than you've been willing to name it. And now you can see it. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not completely, but enough. Enough to recognize that something is already taking form. And this is the part people misunderstand about change. It doesn't begin when everything is clear. It begins the moment you can no longer pretend you don't see it. Because once something becomes visible, a pattern, a truth, a direction, it doesn't go back. It stays quietly, not demanding, not forcing, just present, waiting to see what you will do with it. And you have options. You can dismiss it, call it timing, call it stress, call it imagination. You can soften it until it fits back into the version of your life that feels easier to maintain. You can tell yourself you'll deal with it later. Or you can do something far less comfortable. You can take it seriously. Not dramatically, not all at once, not in a way that requires you to have everything figured out, but in one small, deliberate way. Because making does not happen in one sweeping decision. It happens in choices that seem almost insignificant until they begin to repeat. This is where most people hesitate, not because they don't know what to do, but because they understand that doing it will change something. And change, even chosen change, has consequence. It alters patterns. It shifts relationships. It moves you out of alignment with the version of your life that depended on you staying the same. And that's where the real decision lives. Not in whether you can see it, but in whether you are willing to participate in what you've seen. Because here's the truth. You are already making something every day through what you choose, through what you repeat, through what you allow to continue. The question is not whether you are shaping your life. You are. The question is, are you doing it on purpose? And purpose does not require perfection. It requires awareness followed by action. So maybe tonight it's small. A conversation you stop avoiding, a boundary you hold instead of softening, a decision you make that aligns with what you already know instead of what is easier to maintain. It doesn't need to be visible to anyone else. Most real change isn't. It happens in moments no one witnesses, a shift in how you respond, a refusal to return to something you now recognize as untrue. A quiet decision to build something different, one choice at a time. That is making, not dramatic, not performative, deliberate. So tonight, you don't need to seek anything else. You've already done the first part. You've noticed. You've recognized. You've allowed something to come into view. Now, you decide what to do with it. Let it move with you into how you speak, into how you choose, into the small, ordinary moments where your life is actually built. Because that's where this becomes real. not in the idea of who you are, not in what you understand, but in what you make from it. And if you find yourself unsure later tonight, tomorrow, next week, you can always return to this, not to find something new, but to see more clearly what has already been there the entire time. Because once you've seen it, you are already in the work. And from here, everything you choose becomes part of what you are building. If tonight stirred something in you, if a story lingered, if a question followed you home, if a truth settled quietly beside you, that's the work. Quarter 3 is about stewardship, about recognizing that wisdom is not what we learn, it's what we choose to do with what we've learned. If you'd like to keep walking beside me between episodes, you can find Raven's Lorecast on Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, and Instagram. That's where the conversation continues. The stories expand and the circle remains open. And if you're called to go a little deeper, Patreon is waiting when the time feels right. No pressure, no obligation, just another seat closer to the fire. Until next time, take good care of what you've been given and take good care of yourself. See you next week, my weirdlings.